I would like to speak a little bit about the New Testament, Christianity. This was written approximately 2,000 years ago. The Christians admit that the Jews received the Torah in Mount Sinai. They just call the Jewish Torah the Old Testament. And they claim that God gave part B, which means where the prophets ended, comes now the story of Mary and Joseph that get engaged. And then he goes out of town and he comes back and he sees his fiancée is pregnant. And what's going on, he asks. And she said, God came to me and made me pregnant. This boy will be something special. This is how it starts. And when we review how the New Testament begins with this story, we find something very, very critical. First, the book describes more than 30 generations between King David to Joseph the carpenter. What's the point? The point is to link Joseph the carpenter to the family of King David. Why? Because since they admit that the Torah is the work of God, in the Torah it says that the Messiah must be a descendant of the family of King David. Has to be a direct connection. That's why they're trying to prove that Joseph, the husband of Mary, he is a grandson of King David. So far everything is clear. Just when they finish describing all the generations, they write that Joseph has nothing to do with the baby. He went away, and when he came back, she was pregnant, and she claimed that God made her pregnant. So the question is, who is the mother of JC? The answer is Mary. Everybody saw. No doubt about that. Who is the father? The answer that Christian will say is God. Question we ask is, God is a grandson of King David? King David is the grandfather of God? Obviously not. Why did you waste almost a whole full page describing more than 30 generations to link Joseph to King David? Because you wanted to show that JC is the son of Joseph and he's the Messiah, because Joseph came from King David. But then you made a critical mistake. You just wrote that Joseph is not the father. Do you really think that God would give a book with such critical mistake? Something to think about. Many other mistakes appear in the New Testament, even more than the Quran. The more years are going by, we find many different texts. For instance, there is more than 150,000 different texts, which means if you compare one New Testament to the other, you find many different texts. In the Quran, they have hundreds of different versions. The Torah, the Jewish Torah, which is double or triple the amount of time than Christianity and Islam. All the nations were running after the Jews to destroy their Torah. The Jews were moving from one exile to the other. And when the Jews united together in Israel 50, 60 or 80 years ago, they started to come to Israel. They all brought with them the ancient Torah scroll. And it was all the same Torah everywhere in the world. Even though there was no internet, no connection, no telephones, they couldn't know about other communities in the world. Manually with a feather and ink, they were writing 304,805 letters. And it's all the same. Everywhere you go, the Torah is the same. The New Testament, more than 150,000 different versions. I once asked the Christian professor in one of our debates, I asked him, tell me, if I have a diamond, which is $100 million diamond, original one, and I came to present the diamond to the crowd, and each one of the people from the crowd had a special diamond ready to throw at me as soon as I take my real diamond out, but all the other diamonds is a complete, perfect, fake diamonds. Just when I presented the diamond, all of them threw their diamonds at me. And then what? My real diamond got mixed with all the fake diamonds. There's no way to tell. What happened to my diamond? It's gone. The value will never be the same. Every diamond you pick up, it's 1% or 5% chance that maybe it's real. Nobody will pay you $100 million for it. So I told him, even if your claim is real, that really the New Testament was given by God, it's gone from the world because the original copy will never be found. You have 150,000 different modified books that even if it was divine, it's gone because it was modified completely. Different dates, different names, parts are missing, different spelling mistakes. You can see, you can check, 150,000. Everyone copy manually in the old days, 2,000 years ago, before printing was invented, and it's enough that each person made a mistake in one letter. Every person has a different text than his friend because he has one letter wrong than the other one, and the other one has a different letter wrong. And over the years, 2,000 years, or I should say 1,500 years until they started to print, and that's why you have so many different texts. The Muslims were more careful with the Quran to try to copy it in the original way, but people are people and people are subject to human error. That's why there are hundreds of different versions of the Quran. So, one other mistake in the New Testament, in Act 7, it says that Jacob went to Egypt with 75 people. We all know that when we review in the Torah says clearly that Jacob went to Egypt when his son Joseph was already the assistant of the king Pharaoh. Jacob went to Egypt with 70 people. But what happened to God? He forgot. In the New Testament, it says 75 people. And obviously it's a human error. There are, as I said before, more examples of such human errors such as this. And I'll give one last example and we'll move on. According to Christianity, in Matthew 5, verse 17 to 19, there is a will, actually a direction of Jesus to his students. He was a Jew and he died as a Jew. He really never started any religion. The New Testament started between 70 years to 300 years after his death. There's all kinds of opinions. But even if we go on the 70 years, which is the minimal difference, we are talking 4 to 5 generations. The people who wrote the evangelists, Mark, John, Matthew, Luke, never saw JC. Everything they will tell us about him, we will have to either believe them or not. They cannot supply one proof to what they say. I can come and say that my grandfather used to walk on water and he used to make magic and he was a holy man. Everything I say, it's either yes or no, 50-50. We'll never have a proof for that. Now it's the question, do you want to believe me or not? Do you want to base your entire life based on a story like this or not? When we begin to review their books, we find so many contradictions. For instance, in one book, it describes all the generation from Joseph the carpenter all the way back in history to King David. And in another book they describe it, but there are more than 20 different mistakes. Over here it's described A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and over there it's a complete different orders with different names. What really happened in history? Is this the right way or is this the right way? Both of them cannot be correct. God doesn't make such contradictions. In history, in generations, in the right order, it's impossible.